At the Tesla earnings call, Elon Musk actually dropped a number of very important new information about Robotaxi. First and foremost, he reiterated his recommendation to not invest in Tesla if you don't believe in Robotaxi. Today, we'll watch Tasha Keeney from ARK Invest share her thoughts on the earnings call. We'll also review all the statements made at the call about Robotaxi by Elon. I've got Brian White joining me. Brian is his host of his own YouTube channel called FutureAza. And he's on the road again. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate you joining.
Always on the road, always learning more. This was a big earnings call. I'm excited to get into it.
So a couple of things we'll do, of course, is play some video of Tasha Keeney. But before that, I'm going to go ahead and just let you listen for what Elon said about Robotaxi. I took all the clips, put it together. It's 11 minutes long, so we're not going to play all of them. We'll play some of the key parts and talk about some of the key things.
We postponed the sort of Robotaxi or the sort of product unveil by a couple months where it's shifted to 10/10. And this is because I wanted to make some important changes that I think would improve the sort of the Robotaxi, the main thing that we're going to show, and we're also going to show off a couple of other things. So moving back a few months allowed us to improve the Robotaxi as well as add in a couple other things for the product unveil.
The next question is about timing of Robotaxi event, which we've already covered. So we'll go to the next question. When do you expect the first Robotaxi ride?
I guess that's really just a question of when do I expect the first, when can we do unsupervised full self-driving? It's difficult, obviously. My predictions on this have been overly optimistic in the past. So, I mean, based on the current trend, it seems as though we should get miles between interventions be high enough that it should be far enough in excess of humans that you could do unsupervised possibly by the end of this year. I would be shocked if we cannot do it next year. So next year seems highly probable to me based on point simply plus the points of the curve of miles between intervention. That trend exceeds humans for sure next year. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Let me pause there, Brian. I mean, wow, right? Those are the two big news. First of all, it's now October 10th instead of 8/8, which is not a bad thing at all. Just 2 months away. And secondly, that's the biggest bit of information he shared. And I don't know why no one else is jumping up on that. I guess they've heard about Elon saying things like this before. They've let it go past their heads again, which is unsupervised Robotaxi, I think could happen by the end of this year. I'd be shocked if it wasn't next year, but yeah.
He has absolutely said exactly that before.
Yeah.
And when he says, you got to increase the miles driven between interventions, we'd like to get that better than a human. How many interventions do I have? And if it's scheduled, let me know when, because I have another thing that day and I don't feel like having an intervention. No, it's going to be difficult. It's been impossible so far. Little concerned that he attacked the media who reported the initial delay and then confirmed it. But that's just disappointing. But I'm sure I'll get over it. This is a big event. It's going to change. If the world changes in October versus a month or two earlier, does anyone really remember? Does it matter?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, let's
What is the
continue.
updated timeline for Giga Mexico, and what will be the primary vehicles produced initially?
Well, we currently are paused on Giga Mexico. I think we need to see just where things stand after the election. Trump has said that he will put heavy on vehicles produced in Mexico, so it doesn't make sense to invest a lot in Mexico if that is going to be the case. So we kind of need to see where things play out politically. However, we are increasing capacity at our existing factories quite significantly. And I should say that the cyber taxi or Robotaxi will be produced here at Giga Texas.
As a follow-up, I wanted to ask.
So did you get that, Brian? So this part I wanted you to hear because you're the expert in factories and so forth. People are, again, missing this part, right? Which is he said that Giga Texas is going to produce a Robotaxi. And of course, he explained why Giga Mexico is delayed or they're going to pause it because of the election. But then after that, he then said that, oh, by the way, the Optimus will be also built in production in Giga Texas the end of next year. So, but if you piece together what he said, did you hear that Cybercab would likely be built in Giga Texas next year? Like, that's how soon it is. First half
Right.
next year.
Right. So that part none of that. Some of it surprised me more than others. I'm going to be having a whole show on this. You will be my guest. It'll be out maybe tomorrow or the next day. But this Mexico story doesn't make sense. None of it adds up. The factory was announced in March of last year. All this new threat is very, very new. And Mexico exports to twice as many countries as the U.S. Specifically, they're in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They're in the Latin Trade Pact. So there are a whole lot of countries where a compact, affordable car would be sold that we can't export to. We already know that. Not in any kind of cost-effective way. So, and if this is really that big of a concern, I mean, that's a brand new trade agreement that was signed by the guy who wants to undo the trade agreement, which is very weird and very bad for business. You need security. You need certainty for businesses to feel comfortable growing. There is no certainty. Tesla's not comfortable growing. So kind of weird that they would go so far to support the person who increases uncertainty. But I mean, he's got his objectives, and I guess that's what it is.
Okay, let's listen to some more, and we will get to Tasha Keeney shortly.
About the Robotaxi strategy, and specifically the shareholder deck here notes that the release is going to be, the gating factors is regulatory approval. So maybe you could help us understand, which regulations specifically are the ones that we should be looking for. Is it FMVSS? That's standard. And then, to what extent does the strategy shift? You've done with FSD more of a nationwide, no boundary approach. Is the Robotaxi approach one that's geofenced, so to speak, and is more driven by a state-by-state approach?
I mean, our solution is a generalized solution, unlike what everybody else has. If you see it like Waymo and whatnot, they have a very localized solution that requires high-density mapping. It's quite fragile. So, their ability to accelerate is limited. Our solution is a general solution that works anywhere. It would even work on a different Earth. So if you rendered a new Earth, it would work on a new Earth. So there's capability. I think in our experience, once we demonstrate something is safe enough or significantly safer than human, we find that regulators are supportive of deployment of that capability. It's difficult to argue with if you've got a large number of, if you've got miles, show that unsupervised FSD is safer than human. What regulator could really stand in the way of that? They're morally obligated to approve. So I don't think regulatory approval a limiting factor. I should also say that the self-driving capabilities that are deployed outside of North America are far behind that in North America. With version 12.5 and maybe it's 12.6, but pretty soon we will ask for approval of the Tesla supervised FSD in Europe, China, and other countries. And I think we're likely to receive that before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Which will be a helpful demand driver in those regions, obviously.
Thank you.
See, that part you and I have talked about quite often. I think I've been pushing it. People are not realizing that FSD alone, forget Robotaxi for now, FSD alone, as it improves, it's going to be a demand driver. It's going to increase the sales of existing cars. He's validated that. But the big news, of course, is him saying Tesla's likely to receive regulatory approval to launch FSD in other markets like Europe, China, and other parts of the world by the end of this year. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is what we've been talking about. Do you really want a small scale proof of concept, or do you want just the concept? Do you just want the whole thing? If you wanted, and I've seen people still complaining, where's my coast to coast zero intervention drive that we were promised these many years ago? Well, guys, if you really want them to stop and focus on just one little gimmick, they could do it. They could have that cracked, years ago. But what we really want is a system that actually works. A system where you could change the destination and origin on that map and it would still work. You could change it 1,000 times and it would still work. Waymo works great where it works. I saw a account of a passenger who was in a Waymo that was exiting a garage and it just stopped. It just got stuck. And the person on the thing said, just wait a second, we'll be right with you. And then a dude showed up and said, hey, I'm from Waymo. I'm driving the car out of the garage for you. Try that at 3 a.m. in the middle of nowhere in, New Mexico. It's not going to happen. You don't have that many humans all over the world all the time. So it needs to be foolproof on the entire scale, which is what we're trying to get and what we believe we are finally getting close to. So yeah.
And then here's Elon saying that about General Motors, they canceled their Cruise Origin Robotaxi today. Elon said the real reason why GM canceled it is because they can't get it to work. So let's just play one more clip and then we'll get to Tasha Keeney.
Just to add to that, Travis, in terms of as Elon said, in terms of regulatory approval, the rules are governed by FMVSS in the US, which is NHTSA, which is the same across all 50 states. The road rules are the same across all 50 states. So creating a generalized solution gives us the best opportunity to deploy in all 50 states reasonably. Of course, there are state and even local municipal level regulations that may apply to, being a transportation company or deploying taxis. But, as far as getting the vehicle on the road, that's all federal, and that's very much in line with what, Elon was suggesting about the data and the vehicle itself.
And to add to the technology point, the end-to-end network basically makes no assumption about the location. Like you could add data from different countries and it would just perform equally well there. There's almost close to zero US specific code in there. It's all just the data that comes from the US.
Yeah, to that end, Ashok, it's we can go as humans to other countries and drive with some reasonable amount of assessment in those countries. And that's how you design the FSC software.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Thanks, guys. The next question comes from George from Canaccord. George, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking my questions. Maybe just to expand on the regulatory question for a second.
Yeah, I'm not going to expand on that anymore. Go ahead.
So it is exactly right. That is a very good point. When you or I go to another country and hop in a rental car or some kind of demo, we don't need to spend an hour learning about that country. And I've seen people misunderstanding how AI training works and saying, well, once it's solved in the US, then they're going to solve for Italy, then they're going to solve for Japan. I don't think that's how it works. And I guess this is confirmation that is not how it works.
It's fine tuning. Okay, let's listen to Tasha Keeney. So, of course, she said this. She was interviewed and she said to ignore robotaxis is a huge mistake with Tesla stock. And Elon himself reiterated, he said this a few times right now, do not invest in Tesla if you don't believe we'll solve robotaxi. Don't do it. If you do believe it, that's why you should invest in this.
Keeney and Guggenheim's Ron Yovsikov. Ron, I'm going to start with you because we've been teasing it like this, and I think this is correct. It's a bull-bear debate here. I'm going to start with the bear, given the print.
I'm going to jump past this
of Tesla.
Sure.
Happen, we believe.
In Tesla, and you've come on the show before and laid out the case for autonomous driving and robo-taxis. But even if that is the future, it's arguably years away. So why buy the stock now?
Yeah, so actually, I think, when we're talking about robo-taxis, this is something that will happen, we believe, within the next 5 years. So in fact, our 5-year price target, we think that robotaxis will contribute over 90% of the enterprise value of Tesla at that point. So I think, I'm looking forward to hearing more detail on the call. What we've been seeing from Tesla is, of course, incremental software updates. They have a latest version of FSD where it's very limited in its release currently, but they're adding the functionality to take your hands off the wheel. They said in the letter that they expect the take rate of the full self-driving software to increase based on the increased functionality that they see. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that rollout, because I think to ignore robotaxis today is a huge mistake with this stock, because ultimately.
Do you know something? Do you notice that as soon as she's talking about robotaxi, they show total deliveries?
Well,
cash flow.
Yes. These are not geniuses we're talking about over at CNBC, but Wednesday was right. She's exactly right that the better it gets, the higher the take rate will get. Sorry, Tasha. Tasha was correct. And it's fine. She's absolutely right though. And I love that she was able to maintain her composure in the face of a question like, well, if this company is going to be the most valuable thing in the world, why are you buying it today? What? Because of the thing you just said just now, because of all that. Yeah.
All right, let's keep playing it. Brian, control yourself, please.
I will.
I love Tasha Koenig.
It's an AI play.
Okay. Ron, I don't understand the Robotaxi business model case. I mean, the entire market cap of Uber right now is around $141 billion. And if Tesla's robotaxis wipe out the need for Uber and they take all of that, it's still not that much. Plus, if they're that good, doesn't that mean I don't need to buy a Tesla? And won't it be really hard to make the numbers work if people buy fewer Teslas because they can just get a robot-driven Uber?
Yeah, I think the argument that robotaxi bulls would make, and again, we're certainly not one, but the argument they would make is the pie grows massively. I think the argument we would make, and we're seeing this in China already, is pricing comes down massively and most of that excess profit and excess margin gets competed away. I mean, right now in China, Apollo, which is owned by Baidu, to be clear, is offering rides for just over 10 cents a mile. I think most robotaxi bulls would view that as a very blue sky pricing scenario for robotaxi models. So I think what we struggle with robotaxis isn't that Tesla can't get there at any point in time. It is the timeline, but it's also what steady state unit economics look like, because even if Tesla has a $10,000 cost advantage in robotaxi, that's a massive cost advantage. Over 1 million miles useful life for a vehicle, that's a penny a mile. It's not that meaningful.
So Tasha, do people want to be driven around in really nice Tesla robotaxis that are so high quality that they're going to pay that much for the ride? Why would robotaxi be worth more than selling a whole lot of Teslas?
Well, you compared Tesla to Uber. I'd say that Uber has proven that the ride-hailing market should exist and there is demand for it. But robotaxis will greatly expand the current ride-hail opportunity. I mean, I think it could be a 10x or more expansion.
Right,
that's because
unless people stop buying cars altogether. I mean, there aren't that many more people or that many more places to go, are there?
So it's not about selling individual cars. It's about the utilization of the vehicle. It's about the miles traveled on the car, and you're paying per mile here, right? So today, we were just talking about China. Yes, ride-hail is priced significantly lower than the US in China. But in the US, Uber is charging $2 or more per mile. Tesla can undercut that price because it already has a lower operating cost thanks to its electric vehicle platform. Add autonomy on top of that, that really leverages that cost structure. And once you're able to lower price, you bring more people into the market. You start having, by the way, which is already happening in certain cities, young people will forego buying vehicles because they'll say, hey, I'm going to take an autonomous ride-hailing network because it's actually not that expensive. And in fact, it's cheaper than me driving my personal car if I account for the all-in costs. So I think that's what's really exciting here. And again, I do think that the US is where we'll first see this rolling out. I do think China will be a much more competitive market. In fact, in our valuation for Tesla, we have reduced economics for that reason, because we also believe that there's a chance they might have to share with other local players in terms of the take that they get.
Okay.
But makes no mistake, I mean, this is a market that you should not ignore here.
Boy, that guy was that. I don't get it. The host saying 141 billion for Uber, then why would Tesla be worth more than that? Because this is one division. This is one little part of a very big business. If you think, and yeah, and I don't get it. And poor Peter Griffin there's trying to explain the bear argument and doing a terrible job. I applaud Tasha for being able to maintain composure in the face of truly bizarre questions.
I mean, so the conversation of obviously that if you look at it from the high level, okay, hey, there's so much competition in China. Don't you know Baidu's there? Yeah, they are there. They have 2,000 cars and they plan to grow big time. Well, then why did the general manager of their autonomy division say that they'd be willing to partner with Tesla? They're already the leaders in there because it's very and the unit economics for them. So he points on the price. Yes, you as a consumer can buy it at this 10 cents a mile, whatever it is. True. But can Baidu afford continuing to do this? They are so upside down, billions of dollars. Why did you? I've shown photos of all the humans that they have to hire that are actually teleoperating these cars.
It's insane. It's insane. And the idea that it would get down to a sustained 10 cents a mile is nuts. Because you look at what I look at as my drive to the airport. It's about 50 miles. I would absolutely pay $50, but Uber charges far, far more than
because
that.
They initially charged very low to get you on. Anyways, this whole thing about is there competition? Yes. But is the whole point is that the competition is going to be very limited in limited areas. They're going to be cost prohibitive at some point. It's not the cost. It's worth.
But the 10 cents a mile.
Out.
The 10 cents a mile figure is ridiculous. That's not going to be the final price. That would be literally $5 per hour driving. That's not the real price. It'll be much higher. There will be money in it, and it will still be cost effective for the consumers.
And who's going to win the cost? And if it does go down price wise, who's going to win and last? And who's going to be able to do this in places that competition can't do it? They'll only do it in geo-fenced locations. Let's listen a little bit more to what Elon is saying.
Would be comparing apples and oranges, but GM canceled their pedalless vehicle, and according to the company this morning, their decision was driven by uncertainty about the regulatory environment. From what we understand, and again, maybe I'm wrong here, but the Robotaxi that has been shown, at least in images of the public, is also pedalless and wheelless. Is there a different regulatory concern just if you deploy a vehicle like that doesn't have pedals or a wheel, and that made that different from just be on a traditional Tesla vehicle? Thank you.
Well, obviously, the real reason that they canceled it is because GM can't make it work, not because of regulators. They're blaming regulators. That's misleading of them to do so, because Waymo is doing in those markets. So it's just that their technology is not up to par.
And maybe just as a follow-up, I think you mentioned that FSD take rates were up materially after you reduced the price. Is there any way you can help us quantify what that means exactly? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we've shared we've seen a meaningful increase. I don't want to get into specific because we started from a low base, but we are seeing encouraging results. And the key thing here is, like you said, you need to experience it. Words can't describe it till the time we actually use it. And that's why we are trying to make sure that every time a car is getting delivered, people are being showed how this thing is working, because when you see it working, you realize how great it is. I mean, just to give you one example, so again, there's a biased example, but I have a more than 20-mile commute into the factory almost every day. I have 0 interventions on the latest stack, and the car just literally drives me over. And especially with the latest version, wherein we're also tracking your eye movement, steering wheel nag is almost not there, as long as you're not wearing sunglasses.
Well, we're fixing the sunglasses thing. It's coming soon, so you will be able to drive. You'll be able to have sunglasses on and have the car drive.
Yeah.
But there's the sheer number of times I've talked with smart people who like live in New York or maybe downtown Boston and don't ever drive, and then are asking me about FSD. And I'm like, you can just get a car and try it. And if you're not doing that, you have no idea what's going on.
Thank you. The next question comes from Pierre from New Street. Pierre, please unmute yourself.
Hey guys, thank you for taking my question. So it's on Robotaxi again, and I completely get it that with a universal solution, get like regulatory approval, we get there eventually, clicking up miles and compute, etc. And my question is more, how you think about deployments? Because I'm thinking once you have a car that can drive everywhere, that can replace me, it can replace a taxi. But then to do the ride-hailing service, you need a certain scale. And that means a lot of cars on the road. And so you need an infrastructure to just maintain the cars, take care of them, etc. And so my question is, are you already working on that? Do you have already an idea of what like your plan to deploy looks like? And is that like a Tesla only plan, or are you looking at partners, local partners, global partners to do that? And I'll have a quick follow-up.
This would just be the Tesla network. You just literally open the Tesla app and summon a car, and we send a car to pick you up and take you somewhere. And we'll have a fleet that's, I don't know, on the order of 7 million dedicated soon. In the years to come, it'll be over 10 million, then over 20 million. This is immense scale. And the car is able to operate 24/7, unlike the driver. So the capability, like there's this basically instant scale with a software update. And now this is for a customer-owned fleet. You can think of that as being a bit like Airbnb. Like, you can choose to allow your car to be used by the fleet, or cancel that and bring it back. It can be used by the fleet all the time. It can be used by the fleet some of the time, and then Tesla would share in the revenue with the customer. But you can think of the giant fleet of Tesla vehicles as like a giant sort of Airbnb equivalent fleet, Airbnb on wheels. Then in addition, we would make some number of cars for Tesla that would just be owned by Tesla and be added to the fleet. I guess that would be a bit more like Uber. But this would all be the Tesla network. And there's an important clause we've put in every Tesla purchase, which is that the Tesla vehicles can only be used in the Tesla fleet. They cannot be used by a third party for autonomy.
Okay. And
yeah. So that's interesting, because that's the first time I think I'm now understanding, because I initially thought that if I were Tesla, I would roll it out slowly, one city at a time. I would be making sure that it's Tesla owned vehicles first to pilot out. They might still do that, but he's made it sound like I'm just going to turn it on and everybody's going to be able to do it at any moment in time, anywhere. I don't know if I can interpret it that way, but that's how we made it sound like.
It sure was a lot to chew on, and I think it's still far enough out that anything is subject to change. I love that he just called out GM. Well, GM, there's regulations. Right. First, you got to make a car that works, Mary. And that's really where GM is at. It doesn't matter how good or bad the regulatory framework is if you don't have the product. And it is disappointing that was followed up by how many, what's the take rate? And because I'd like to know that answer. And it's clear they're not ready to share it.
It means it's slow. I think it's the number of the take rate is low. But if once you get FSD really showing, maybe it's 12.5, maybe it's 12.6, maybe it's 12.7, 13.
Yeah.
Once it gets to be something great, I've been saying, why do we care about the take rate so much? It could be 5% now. Who cares? It'll be 15% someday. Who cares? What matters is once it gets so good, it's going to be close to 100%. Like, you will buy this thing. It's going to be part of the whole benefit. Not 100%, but you know what I'm saying? Like much higher. Yes. It's going to be like
not 100%. But if you own that car and you don't have any interest in it, somebody else will. Right. And that's going to be a factor in the future.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's like we've been saying, when we get there, none of this will matter.
Okay, interesting. I mean, we heard the bear, and the bear was saying that Tesla will get Robotaxi, but we think that its competition is going to be there. It's going to be everywhere. You have GM announcing that they're not going to do it anymore. You did hear that Waymo got $5 billion investment from Google, and we do have, and we've been following closely, the 20 plus companies in China that is offering Robotaxi there. But if you dig deeper, if you truly understand what's actually happening, are those truly robotaxis? And what we're discovering now is that there's a lot of teleoperation going on at this point. And can they get to the point where they don't need it? And even if they did, it would be in very, what he said, remember, even Elon himself said, it's fragile and it's local.
Yes.
So,
those are, two serious problems that create the whole issue.
And the cost. These guys are offering it, but they're like $25 billion underwater. So
what a bargain.
We'll see. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate this. Follow Brian on his YouTube channel, FutureAza. He's going to do another show, deep dive in Giga Mexico, what's actually truly happening there. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.